Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the interview room. Is this music perfect or what? Listen to this. What a day. Your Honor, Cousin Eddie was involved in drug transactions and money was transferred. Well, you remember, Counselor, earlier in the day I said that none of that stuff was coming in. But, okay. I've changed my ruling. Cousin Eddie gets to come in and set the stage. Holy cow, what a day. What a day. I just couldn't resist coming up tonight because, you know, I absolutely love the people of South Carolina. And, you know, they're my kind of folks. And I just can't wait to see what's going down here with Cousin Eddie. I don't know about you, but I think we're all on the same page on this guy. I mean, he's going to look like right out of Central Casting. And speaking of Central Casting, the Oscar goes to, well, we'll see. Right now, I am presenting it to, ladies and gentlemen, Alex Murdaugh, however he pronounces his last name, I'm not sure yet. I keep getting corrected in the chat. But either way, he gets an Oscar. And we're going to talk about that performance. Not only today, I mean, I'm going to get into that one later because there was so many twists and turns in that thing. I mean, you know, closed arms, fake cry, you know, ate dinner, I wasn't really sure, medical issues, you know, asking questions with questions. I mean, talk about craziness. And so I'm going to kind of frame this up tonight in a very professional manner, but quite frankly, I'm also going to be very blunt and honest about what I'm seeing, and you share what you're seeing. Remember, all parties are innocent until proven guilty in the court of law, including Mr. AM. And all of that trial that we've been watching, the evidence slowly but surely starts pouring out. And every time I think, you know, that was interesting, I just get hit with another baseball. And, you know, the fact that now that we got Cousin Eddie coming back in, you know, to the game here, we'll see what's happening. But, you know, there's a theme here, and it was set pretty clearly by Alex. And I think we all know what it is. That theme is this boat accident. Again, I go back. Yeah, Judge Newman calls him Murdaugh. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Jackie. I don't know. And he calls himself Murdaugh. So, you know, I guess we'll figure out his correct pronunciation one day. It may be 1 2 3 4 7 8 2 1. We don't know yet. Let's see what the jury's going to do. And how about the SLED agent lying to the jury? Well, I didn't. He just said it was wrong. It doesn't mean it was a lie. I saw that. And of course, you know, he didn't have the information at the time that ultimately they did when he presented that information about the shirt. So when he did get it, the grand jury was over, and the fact that he sat on the stand and said, "Yeah, I did it," that should tell you whether or not he's telling the truth. But that aside, let's talk about the other lies. And that goes into the category of AM. And the second interview, in the car, where you know I love the testimony today where Alec had a call to get his golf clubs out of the Suburban. You know, of course, you've got you've got a murder investigation going on with your son and your wife. Certainly you want to get them golf clubs. You know, you got some golfing to do. But I don't know. This is going to be really interesting. So I want to get into this other interview, and I want to point out tonight right up front that, and when we talk about Cousin Eddie too, I've been called Cousin Eddie because we're in an Airstream. And I tell people all the time, I will lower your property values. You just invite me over, and I will park this puppy on your street, all my friends and family, or anybody else. And we will absolutely lower your property value for you. So I love the fact that this guy's already got a character name, and I cannot wait. Actually, he's been the guy I've been waiting for since Karen and I went out to the crime scene, the alleged crime scene, and took a look at it. You can see it. It's on the video that says the beach house in Edisto and the botched suicide attempt. And, you know, the fact that, of course, had it been successful, had Cousin Eddie not, missed, one of the family members could have been rolling in the additional cash, and now you've got 3 people murdered, including the guy that potentially pulled the triggers. And it's a whodunit. It's a whodunit. So we'll see where that's going to go. If you want to see the area before he gets on the stand, do me a favor and go watch that video again and go see Maggie's place where she relaxed. But I want to point out a couple of quick things that absolutely has still weighed heavy on my heart. And the fact is, a couple of things, right? I'm going to call Alec on this particular presentation tonight, and the reason for the Oscar, I'm going to call him the director, because I want you to recognize that he doesn't necessarily answer questions. He asks questions, and then he fills gaps within that question. Kind of like, what do you mean by that? Or what do you have? Can you keep me informed so I can keep the family informed? And now, mind you, this is a guy who's on trial for blowing his son's head off, almost. And I've got to give it to him. I know there's scientific terminology for redirecting and, putting in barriers between him and turning and all the other stuff that we know. I have interviewed a lot of guys, but, these investigators were up against a wall of attorneys from the get-go. Okay. And the investigative team, is playing these first couple of interviews. They're playing chess, but they're not playing chess with a single individual. I love the fact that every time he shows up, he's got a new attorney or a different attorney with him. He's got one, from Buford in today's video. He's got the guy sitting at the table in the second video. And then he's got the other guy, with the Suave shirt, tucked out with his chest hair hanging out in the first video. Okay. And I've never had a case in my career anyway, where you walk into a room and you've got a wall of lawyers. So I've been trying to figure out of that wall of lawyers, they keep getting introduced as his friends. And if you kind of put that together, every time Alec asks about the investigators, he drops a name. And so this guy has been selling people, as I used to say, soggy bread for a very long time. And so he's the director tonight. He's going to be the director. But I want you to pay close attention to a couple of things that are going to be very, very obvious this evening. Number one, the Kleenex grabs are all props. Okay. And I'm going to go by, cue the tears. Act 1, Act 2, and we'll just kind of move along. It was interesting today that if you go back and watch today's testimony and today's interview, where they showed the interview start and Alex started with the tears, which, by the way, you've not seen one tear, and you can watch it again tonight. We're going to watch it. But in the interview, Alec reaches out and grabs a tissue, right? And he goes into, action. Okay, he's got the play going here. But what was interesting is he parroted and mirrored what we call mirroring that same behavior sitting at the defense table. The moment in the interview he reached up and grabbed the tissue, he reached up at the same time and grabbed a tissue at the defense table, and he went into the theatrics. Right? I absolutely, there's a part of me that thinks, this guy's going to be interesting, down the line. So remember what Paul last saw. I want to remind everybody those moments. What Paul last saw, if AM is the shooter, which allegedly he has been arrested for it, and now he's on trial for it, charged with murder. If he's convicted, remember his son witnessed his father blasting him with a shotgun. Let's not lose that point. Let's not lose that point. And remember, doubt and reasonable doubt aren't standards that are exacts. There's a lot of room sometimes. I assure you the jury's going to go back to this interview tonight. Not my interview, his interview, Alex. Because he's good, but he's not that good, to be honest with you. It just comes off so disingenuous that even, and I'm going to point it out, even the guys in the back seat, at one point when he starts to break down, they're out, having a slow boil. They're out, sitting in the back seat, and the other detective, goes like this, like, hang on for a minute, act 3. Okay. And they're just, chatting away. But what I want you to catch tonight is how Alec reacts to the non-reaction. Okay? To the non-reaction. All right, so let's get into it. And I'm going to play stop talk. You guys tell me what you think in the chat. Here we go.
Can I take this call really
Yes,
quick?
Sir, go
this
right
is
ahead.
my sister-in-law.
Yes, go ahead.
And she's trying to... Hey, Marion. Okay, Lynn, I'm meeting with Marion, when I meet with law enforcement, so I'll call you in just a minute.
Thanks. I don't have a card.
That's fine.
Did Chelsea call you? Okay. Okay. Can you let Chelsea know and then make her run Lynn down? Okay, well, tell her to go get Chris.
And of course, in body language and all this other stuff, the groin grabs are all signs of insecurity. I'm not really sure, that kind of stuff. So that's why he keeps grabbing his
Christy to find Lynn. Get any one of the secretaries to find her. All right. Thank you. Sorry to put that on you. Bye. Sorry about that.
That's all right. One thing I want to do before we start is I'd like to get a cell phone exam so we can just corroborate everything. Let me get a consent, and I got a guy here that's going to do it.
Are you going to download it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
So I'll get to keep my phone?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. You all get to see my phone? Good. Well, he's had 3 days right now. So he's not worried about anything on that phone yet. And I would submit to you that's why Paul's phone is going to be so important. And you're going to hear a couple of themes here. And I want you to listen to how many times he eats Paul in this interview. And what I mean by that, he throws Paul under the bus. I can't tell you how many times. And I don't know if we're going to count them.
How much attorney-client privilege stuff is on there?
A lot.
Okay. We do have a taint attorney that's going to examine it before we ever do.
What is a tank attorney?
A taint attorney, they look at somebody who's not affiliated with the case that makes sure that there's... Jim, do you know?
Yeah,
Can
sure.
you explain it better?
Sure. And I mean, it's a privileged attorney that doesn't, if there is attorney-client privilege information, it's redacted or extracted by the taint attorney.
How do they know who's a client?
I know.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Whatever
yeah,
it is.
yeah.
You know what?
But
if y'all get some
but
attorney-client
whoever
stuff.
that is, would go through me. And
So
we'd work through it.
signature.
Just write your name here.
So Alec, I've had situations where
It's not a big deal.
Give me a list of all his clients or something like that, But
I'll fill out the rest.
I think the big thing, Joe, is, when you download that phone, I don't know if emails come with it or not, because that's probably where all this attorney-client privilege stuff.
And we can actually isolate the emails.
Yeah, that's probably the thing. So you don't text clients, but
No, I do. I text a lot of clients.
Okay.
I'm not a big emailer.
Is that an 11 or 12, or do you know?
I do not know.
Okay.
I can tell you that in the case for you if you want me to. You look at the back, it should have a number.
So this is what we call the helper in the business, right? The director, the helper. He's here to thank everybody, appreciate what you're doing. Oh, by the way, did I tell you 3 days ago, my son and my wife were dead in a field, and I was laying next to him down by a kennel. And, he's ready to go. He's ready to go here. So let me help you out.
Give me some light.
Yeah, what was your date of birth again, Mr. Murdaugh?
2768.
Now, I said this in the last interview with him, so he's not lost any of his credibility here. He keeps looking at what the detectives are writing, at least the one to his left. And you'll notice there are times that the attorney in the back, when he realizes that a line of questioning is going a certain way, he's a lefty in the back. So you'll see him start to take notes as well. Now, those notes come in handy down the road, because what you now can do is, what where the investigators are going. And of course, you can get a room full of lawyers, which they did, and you can strategize. And you can talk about timelines, you can talk about gaps, you can talk about strengths, weaknesses, and you can create a narrative. But you can't help when what we call leakage starts to flow that kind of ties you closer to the truth.
And the last four of your
They
social.
don't get on that. Doesn't say anything on it.
Most of the new ones don't.
Probably have to open it up.
Oh, well, it's got.
Jim, you want to witness that for me, please?
And if you got a passcode or
My passcode is,
so write it on there.
start at the bottom 9, go up 9669.
9669.
Yes, sir.
All right, let me run.
I mean, what is this sniffling and snorting? And I get the whining and all of that stuff, but I don't get this where he keeps coming up with that stuff. I think it's a defense mechanism, and it buys him time.
Just tell him I'll be right back.
See, he's not worried about it, because now he's going to just do some I'm going to call it chit chat or yik yak, right? Whatever, yik yak. Remember when he said yik yak? Yeah, I think he's going to do some yik yak in here in a second. So let's listen.
Where are you from, sir?
Yip
I'm
yeah.
actually from Barnwell.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, sir.
I got some cousins in Barnwell.
I got people in Barnwell too. Mix them.
Those are called bridging statements. So there's 5 steps to a sale. Remember that: prospect, personalize, promote, create, and close. So he's got his prospect. He's in the back seat. He's personalizing. Now he's going to promote it. He's got family up there. He's going to create something by bringing in another statement. Then he's going to try to close the guy behind him.
Mixing oil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my.
You kin to Dickie Mixon?
I don't know. That Mixon oil, my Uncle Ray Mixon, and his son Teddy and Bobby and a bunch of them. Then Freddie Mixon, he was.
I knew Freddie Mixon very well.
And his wife Etta and Jill.
Mr. Freddie goes to Elko Church.
Yeah, not anymore. He did.
I mean, he went.
Well, he did.
Yeah.
Well, I was at his funeral. He had a tiger paw casket at the funeral. He's a big Clemson guy.
You know Big John Bedingfield, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
I know John.
That's my cousin.
Okay.
In Sweet Caroline.
John's son and my son are the same age. They were in school together.
So you grew up in Barnwell?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the close was, we have family. We know family together, right? That was the close. All right.
All right, sir. So he's got it, and he's taking care of that.
But I get it back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, sir. So when we spoke the other night, I got kind of a basic.
Now the bobbing begins. And that bobbing is going to be a clue for all of us. That bobbing is fear. I'm not sure where this one's going to go. I've got a narrative. I need to keep it up, and I'm going to win.
Overview.
Yes, sir.
And it was pretty traumatic.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I know
so,
you
yeah.
need to ask me. You ask me what you need to.
So I want you to.
All right. Now, the detective said it was pretty traumatic. And his response, void of emotion, is that's okay. You got to do what you got to do. 3 days after seeing his son's brain laying next to his body.
Good. Let's start Monday morning and take me through your day.
Monday morning, you know, did I do Monday morning?
We're going to get a lot of this. You know, not sure. Very vague answers. They're hollow answers. And then again, okay, the follow-up to that is going to be a question to the question.
My wife and my older son had gone to the baseball games that weekend. You know, I really can't remember what I did Monday. I know I went to work, but you know, I think I was dragging a little bit from the weekend, and that I went to work. I usually mess around on my farm, and then I go to work. I was at work.
Is there anybody need to know where he was on Monday?
You know.
Were you at the office in Hampton, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So I was at my office in Hampton. You know, I mean, I was just at my office doing
Legal work.
Yes, sir.
Now, you know, is a confirmation to, you know, I'm selling you something. You know how it goes. You get that, you know. So he's constantly selling. He's selling.
I'm sure I can go back and probably recreate some specifics if you need me to, but I can't like sit here and recall on the top of my head exactly what I was working on. I know one thing I was working on.
You notice he didn't ask him as a whole what you were actually working on. He asked what you were doing, and this is a good opportunity for him to seize the conversation about the boat issue.
We had some big motions coming up in a Dominion Energy case. I was getting ready for those, and I was getting ready for some motions. I'm a defendant in a civil case involving my son. I told you about the boat wreck.
Yes, sir.
And there were some motions coming up in that on Thursday, and I was mostly just getting ready for those things, and then other junk.
What time did
So we know he's under stress for the Thursday of that week based on what he's saying here. And again, it ties back to that boat issue.
Did you leave the house to go to the office?
I'm not sure.
Who all was at the house when you left?
Thinking.
To go to my office that morning?
Or when you got up, who was at the house?
Deflection.
I'm sure my wife was. And I can't remember if Blanca had made it out there yet or not.
And who was Blanca?
Blanca is our housekeeper.
Okay.
And she comes different. She doesn't have set hours, but she comes most days. She'll be able to tell you if I was there when she left or not.
Okay.
I can't remember.
And
look at him looking down to see what he's writing. This is remember everything about behavior. Every behavior has a purpose. Every behavior has a purpose. It's either you're trying to obviously figure something out, do something, or you're thinking through what a result could be. How do I create that result? But remember, if you just look at him right now, he's talking about the death of his family. The detective's trying to figure out what exactly were you doing on Monday? And the thank you, Sherry. Exactly, Shanna. The detective's trying to figure out, let's get down to it. Let's get in the nitty-gritty here. Okay. And he is just so calm, within 3 days of the death of his family. At no time has he offered any idea about statements like, how's the murder investigation coming? The word murder never comes up in this idea with him. Who murdered my family? Who, what he wants to know is, what do you have? And the very first night when he says, are they dead? Remember, that came from a very methodical, logical trial lawyer who is known in the community not only by name but by family associations. But when he first tells the authorities that night that he saw his son's, as he says, it was next to him. Basically, he says his brain. Okay, he says his brain. And then he has to ask the question, are they dead? Well, in that conversation, he also brings up that he ran over, first of all, to Maggie, then he changed it and he went to Paul, and he rolled Paul over. And in that event, the cell phone pops out of some pocket. We know it ended up on Paul's rear end. But here's a question nobody's asked him. Why didn't you run over and roll Maggie over to see if she was dead? I mean, you did it with a guy, with your son whose brain's laying next to him. But what about your wife who you loved and all this relationship that's so perfect and et cetera, et cetera? I don't think he's said anything about that anywhere. At least I haven't heard it. But maybe he has somewhere. But I don't think so yet. I have a real issue with that. And, because he says that they were so close. And he has a reason to check up on Paul and roll him over. But Maggie's laying there in the field on her stomach. Why didn't he roll her over?
So you went to the office, you did, some motions. What time did you leave the office?
I left a little bit earlier than normal because my son Paul was coming home.
Okay.
Because he had not been with us during the weekend, and he was coming home. We were going to replant.
All right, so let's listen to this for a second. And I agree with you, by the way, Vet Girl. Thank you so much. He's recording the interview. It looked like a record button on his phone. Should be in possession of the investigator until they're done. Yeah. No, they know exactly what they're doing here. This is 2 investigations going on. You've got his attorneys who are creating problems, and we're hearing some of it today. And then you've got the investigators who are trying to figure out who the actual murderer is of these 2 victims. Now, here's where it's going to get interesting, because we're now going to hear conversations about how scatterbrained Paul was, how he was, ADHD, and he's going to lay out all of this Paul problem.
Some sunflowers the next day.
Okay.
And so he was calibrating, doing and getting everything ready. So he got home a little early. I left a little early so he and I could knock around, and we knocked around for, just doing things we like to do out there,
Okay.
There's a lot of vagueness here. You're hearing that? We knocked around, we knocked around, we do a lot of things that, well, no, the investigator doesn't know. That's why he's asking the questions. But what's interesting is the narrative. He introduces another gun.
We were riding around looking at food plots, looking, looking for hogs.
Now, why are you looking for hogs if you don't have an AR with you to shoot them?
A little bit of target shooting.
Oh, wait, you did do some target shooting, but it's going to be a Magnum 22.
Just bullshit.
Yeah. You said Paul wasn't with you over the weekend. Where does he live with you at the house on Moselle?
Well, I mean, that's his home, but
Yeah.
he has an apartment in Columbia.
Okay.
And he goes to Charleston a lot of weekends with his buddies.
Okay.
And he had been in Charleston for the weekend.
Okay.
And then Paul works for my brother John. This out here, you met John.
Yes, sir.
So Paul works for him. So Paul decided to he went to spend the night with my brother, his Uncle John. They were very, very close.
Okay.
He knows a lot about Paul that day, but he doesn't remember what he did. He can't tell you what I did during the day, but I can tell you everything that Paul did, over the weekend and even that day. But, he's asked, well, what did you do at work? I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know, yada, yada, all of that information in this investigation is really important because we get a chance to watch it now. And all of this is before the jury already. The courts played it. And now the public's seeing it. And the public gets to decide whether or not this guy's credible. Even if he doesn't take the stand, I'm calling, Oscar, keep moving, keep going, because we used to love this because we used to take all of their statements, and the DA in the district attorney's office down in San Diego used to blow it all up, all of these statements on a board and present it before the jury for closing arguments. And so all of this, yip yap is not making sense.
Sunday night.
Okay.
And then he worked for John Marvin, and he came home Monday afternoon.
Okay.
Now, the other thing that we need to consider here is the question, of these ATVs and the all-terrain vehicles around that property, because apparently they're driving around the property. And we've heard now statements that he and Paul were shooting that day. So that does two things. Number one, that's the second gun that he can say, and that the defense will probably say, he had his hands on that day, and that will explain the gunshot residue. Because I think this case is coming down to a couple of things. It's coming down to these interviews. It's coming down to the DNA evidence. It's going to come down to the forensic video data. And don't forget, we've got Paul's shoe on that video. So if they argue the video itself in terms of date, time, and all this other stuff, we've got Paul's shoes, and I think that's why the DA put his shoes into evidence today. Because if you look down, you can see his shoes, and I did that the other night. You'll see it on 2 slides. They're the exact same shoes he was shot in. And then we now have the shell casings around the body and around the house. So today that was introduced into evidence. And then we have the 2 types of shot, i.e., which I talked about the other night: bird shot, buckshot, or excuse me, snake shot, rat shot, whatever you want to call it. There's smaller pellets, and then of course you got the buckshot, the double-aught, that are bigger caliber. The first round was that shot. And like I said the other night, that it's not unusual in a rural setting because there's snakes and a lot of other things. And in Texas, you see it all the time. They take some of that, quick pellet shot as the first round. And then, of course, the second one is home protection. So you got to get 2 rounds off if somebody's coming into your house. Well, I find it really interesting, and he kind of got a curveball today where they talked about every shotgun in the house had the exact type of loads. It had a light shot or a bird shot, whatever you want to call it, first load, and then second load, it was the buckshot.
Roughly what time in the afternoon?
I would think it'd be somewhere in the 5 o'clock range, a little bit. It was broad daylight when it wasn't dusk, dark, or late.
Okay.
And we rode, we just rode around. We rode around our dove field looking at how the corn was doing. He and I had planted corn in the dove field, and he planted the corn in the duck pond, and he was, showing me how much better his corn was doing than mine was. And we rode around the duck pond. I mean, we just, we rode the property.
Yes, sir.
We rode the property. Then, we rode around so much. We just rode.
Okay.
And we also heard testimony sometimes the blackout was left on the ATVs. Are they riding around in the ATVs?
Probably.
He's thinking here.
It was a good little while. It was more than 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
Okay.
And, was it 2 hours? I don't know. I'd say it was more than an hour probably.
Really wasn't keeping track of time?
And it wasn't, it wasn't getting dark. Mama wasn't home yet. She had gone to a doctor's appointment. So,
Yeah.
So is that an answer? So
Just out of curiosity, target practice, what y'all shooting?
just a little bottle. You mean what gun?
Yeah.
A 22 Magnum.
Rat shot.
I think. No, it wasn't rat shot. I think he shot 2 times and I shot 1 time.
Okay. So after y'all got finished riding around, try to take me through the rest of the evening.
All right.
Okay, now he's getting nervous because you see a body shift here.
At some point we were all back at the house together.
Mm-hmm.
Maggie had gotten home, and we sat down, we ate supper, which we usually eat supper together. The one thing I remember, I don't know how much detail y'all want, so if I start talking about something that you don't need, just tell me and I'll move to something else.
Okay, so now this is critical. We're talking about the murder of his family. And he is asking and making a statement about, I don't know how much detail you want. That is very unusual. Very unusual from a murder victim's family. Most of the time, they're leaning into you, pressuring you to give you everything. What do you want? How, where do you want to go? How can I help you? They're not qualifying their responses and then asking you a question. How much do you want? Because he ends up saying, I want it all.
More detail, the better, sir.
So
There you
Paul
go.
has been having high blood pressure, and his mama was worried sick about it. So we were actually, you know, this was a direct thing, getting him, he doesn't like to go to doctors, making him go get his blood pressure checked. His feet had swollen up recently.
Wow.
So, you know, it was a big, huge deal.
Okay.
You know, we hung around the house for a little while. I know that Maggie went to the kennels. I don't know exactly where Paul went, but he left the house too.
Okay. How did
He's looking at the investigator like, are you paying attention to what I got going on here? Because I just told you that Maggie went to the kennels. And, you know, I agree, Tamara, exactly. That there's not some unknown dude here. It's not Saw. It's not some other dude. But I don't want to lose my train of thought where he's just said, I just brought Maggie into this conversation where she went to the kennels, but I can't give you any more detail than that. And then, by the way, I can't tell you what Paul was doing, but I just know they went to the kennels.
Maggie get down to the kennels?
I don't know exactly, but on normal occasions, she would drive a buggy, drive a four-wheeler, or very common for her to walk.
Okay. How about Paul?
Paul wasn't much of a walker, but he would use all of the others.
Okay.
But I mean, it could be anyway,
Okay.
you know?
So if they were riding around, my question would have been, where did you guys come back and park when you were riding around? Was it back at the kennels or was it at the house? Because right now it's vague.
I don't know exactly. I wish I could help you with that.
So they left and went down to the kennels.
Well, Maggie went to go to the kennels.
Okay. Paul left.
And I'm assuming, you know, Paul left because of, you know,
Gotcha.
what happened.
So he's got to put Maggie at the kennels, even though there's testimony from her sister that he calls and says, let's go visit my sick father. And so this conversation that he's having right here is critical at the access of this investigation. Because what he is not anticipating is her sister to have had a conversation with Maggie. And so what he's doing, and look at his eyes there, how he's looking at the investigator to see if the investigator's looking at him. And this sled guy is doing a great job basically letting him run. And so this is critical for him because now this is the first time he's got to explain in totality how Maggie got to the kennels. So he's had 3 days to think about it with his team. I would submit to you that team got together, asked him these questions, and the reason there's no detail in any of this, and there's a lot of I don't know, I can't recall, it's because that's classic responses in depositions. Just watch any deposition in a civil trial. And I would submit to you, they've done a lot of civil trials. So the team is probably gathered around him and said, look, don't guess. Just kind of say, I don't know, you know, the typical answers, right? So I would submit to you, he's projecting what his training and what he's experienced sitting at a deposition table.
I mean, I'm assuming Paul went to the kennels.
Okay.
I feel that Paul went to the kennels and then he looks down to see if he writes it down.
And What did you do once Maggie and Paul left?
I stayed in the house.
Okay.
And I was watching TV, looking at my phone, and I actually fell asleep on the couch.
Okay. And what time did you?
You know, I don't know
wake up?
exactly what time I woke up, but
See him look down there? That was very subtle. But watch this. After he gives the answer, he's looking down.
You do once Maggie and
Not
Paul
yet.
left.
I stayed in the house.
Okay.
And I was watching
Coming
TV,
up.
looking at my phone, and I actually fell asleep on the couch.
Okay.
And
what time did you?
You know, I don't know
wake up?
exactly what time I woke up, but
right there.
when y'all get my phone, you know, I think one of the first things I did when I got up was call Maggie because I was going to my mom's. And I know I texted her because I checked my phone. And what time do we say the text was, Jim? Like 9:06.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I got it written down from the other night.
I showed you the other night,
yes,
didn't I?
Yes, sir. I got this.
So, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Right. Right. But, you know, the good answer there is he
I
let him
texted
run.
her, so I.
And remember, you know, the other guy in the back seat, as I've shared this so many times, the knees are moving. Yeah, these are all signals of deception, every one of them. He is not your guy who is telling the truth here. He's lying out of his every word not every word. He's got some truth in here. You know, he sprinkles the truth, but his behavior is very specific. He has rehearsed how he's going to say this, why he's going to say this, and how much he's going to say. And when he does not know, he ends up getting into the deposition mode, I'll call it. All right. Because this is what he tells his clients. Look, if you don't know, don't say this, say this, say this, say that. So what he's doing is he's parroting his behavior of what he is experienced in helping others get through other proceedings, criminal proceedings and or civil proceedings.
Called her just before that. And I mean, she didn't answer at that point. And I left to go to my mom's.
Okay.
Y'all will just have to look. I'm not sure if I called Paul or not.
and that's why we're getting the phone so we can nail down the times and everything.
So I left, I drove. Well, you know, I'm gonna tell y'all this, even though I think it's kind of crazy.
All right. So this is another, you know what, seeing how I'm sitting here, I'll just throw a knuckleball at you.
You know, I was certain that I heard them pull up. I mean, I was positive that I heard, and people don't just come out there. You know, we don't get like passed through. I was certain that I heard them pull up, but they didn't.
Okay, so you see what he just did there? He introduced they entering the property, and then he distanced himself from the lie. This is very familiar even 3 days ago. I need to tell you about a guy, you know, not really sure. It's kind of crazy, but can I tell you about this guy who, you know, embeds himself with Navy SEALs who are going around, you know, killing Black Panthers around the country for the FBI? Okay. This is the exact same technique. That behavior is very specific. And he made a conscious choice to throw that knuckleball into the conversation. He saw an opening and he threw it right at SLED. And listen to how he ties it into somebody running, but then he pulls it back to a cat.
Okay. Well, if you heard something pull up, what did it sound like?
You know, I can't tell you what it sounded like. I just know that I thought that my wife had pulled up, or that Paul had pulled up.
Well, how did Paul and his wife pull up if they're down at the kennel? At least Maggie.
Would it have been the buggy that she normally drives, or would it be a car?
No, I had the impression that a car pulled up.
Okay.
Okay, 5 seconds ago, he didn't know what it was. And the detective kind of gives him an out, and he takes it. So what he does is he dovetails into the conversation, and then he qualifies that with, oh yeah, I thought it was a car. But let's listen for a second, go back just for a second and listen how he qualifies.
Like, I just know that I thought that my wife had pulled up, or that Paul had pulled up.
Would it have been the buggy that she normally drives, or would it be a car?
No, I had the impression that a car pulled up.
Okay.
You know?
And had you woken up by that time, but hadn't left for your mom's?
Yep.
Okay.
But it wasn't much time in between there, because I left pretty damn close. It wasn't much time between me waking up and me leaving the house.
Do you see what he just did 3 days later? He just introduced a strange vehicle entering the property with potentially 2 people because he utilizes the word they. I'm going to go back just for a second because I think this is important. It's pivotal.
That I heard them pull.
All right. Them.
Was Jim like 9:06?
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I got it written down from the other night.
I showed you the other night, didn't I?
Yes, sir. I got this.
So, I texted her. So I called her just before that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, she didn't answer at that point. And I left to go to my mom's.
Okay.
Y'all will just have to look. I'm not sure if I called Paul.
Well,
or not.
and that's why we're.
And of course they'd have to look, right? Because if he's the shooter, hypothetically, allegedly, and this is planned out, well, after the post incident, all of his messaging starts to occur. But you would think the very first night, if your wife and your son has been murdered and you have knowledge like this about, hey, I need to tell you something. I thought I heard a car pull up and they were in it, i.e. 2 people. You see, what he's doing is he's introducing 2 people 3 days later. And then he introduces the sniffing and the breakdown where some people are hearing, I did him bad or they did him bad. It's right during this time frame mentally for him. So his behavior is very specific. It's very specific, and it has a purpose. And that purpose, going back to the introduction of how he lays things out, he introduces the shotgun, i.e. I touched it. I went to the house. I got one right here. You may want to unload that, officer. He introduces the cell phone. I tried to roll Paul over and a cell phone pops out. He introduces the, let me go back to my notes here for a second. He introduces the narrative to the staff. No, I was at the house for how long? And she testified 15, 20, and he's like pressing her. And now in this particular interview, he is controlling the narrative that he wants the investigators to hear. So I would submit to you, there are 2 parallel things going on here. His defense team, i.e. lawyers, and the guy sitting in the back seat is taking notes because they know that to them, it's not going to make sense. And you're going to see a signal of that here in a couple of minutes. And I'm going to point it out to you. Even the guy in the back seat, he's not buying the soggy bread. He's not buying it, but you'll notice he's trying to make eye contact with the detective.
Getting the phone so we can nail down the times and
Right.
and everything.
So I left, I drove. Well, you know, I'm gonna tell y'all this, even though I think it's kind of crazy. You know, I was certain that I heard them pull up. I mean, I was positive that I heard, and people don't just come out there. You know, we don't.
So he acknowledges he was certain that he was positive that they pulled up. And I'm going to qualify that to tell you, because I know you guys don't think it either. People just don't come out there. That goes to the victim continuum. Low risk. Okay. So he's introducing again the narrative, and this time he's introduced subtly, 3 days later, 2 shooters.
Get like passed through. I was certain that I heard them pull up, but they didn't.
Okay. Well, if you heard something pull up, what did it sound like?
You know, I can't tell you what it sounded like. I just know that I thought that.
I can't tell you what it sounded like because it's a lie.
That my wife had pulled up, or that Paul had pulled up.
Would it have been the buggy that she normally drives, or would it be a car?
No, I had the impression that a car pulled up.
Okay.
You know, and
had you woken up by that time, but hadn't left for your mom's?
Yep.
Okay.
Now he should have let him sink in that one. He gave him an out because he was allegedly taking a nap. Remember?
Okay. But it wasn't much time in between there because I left pretty damn close. It wasn't much time between me waking up and me leaving the house.
Okay.
And when I went outside, you know,
thinking, and
there's a wild cat that lives around that house. Okay. I'm pretty sure it was the cat that ran from my car, but you know, I never had the impression it was a person, but there was something.
Okay.
You
know? This is classic. Classic. Now he's turned this, I'm positive, I'm sure they pulled up, to a cat fleeing the scene. It could have been a person, but I'm just going to be vague here and send you off into this rabbit hole, detective.
No, but I really don't think, you know, I'm just throwing that out there because it was.
And that is a truthful statement. I'm just throwing that out there. Remember Barry Morphew with the mountain lion? That sound familiar?
In my mind.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's totally fine.
I left, I drove to my mom's. I checked on my mom.
She lives right out here, correct?
She lives at Alameda. Okay. Checked on my mom, talked with Shelly for a few minutes, you know.
Shelly is?
The caregiver.
Okay.
All right. Now, this is a stress mechanism now stress is starting to build, and watch him carefully how he's getting nervous here, and he's realizing, you know, I just put a loaf of soggy bread on the shelf here, and I'm not sure a customer's going to come by and pull it off and put it in their cart and scan it later. Okay. So he's going to get a little nervous here, and you're going to see some real behavioral changes.
And, you know, I know that I called some people on the way there. I know I returned a call from my brother, John.
And this is where I'm going to say, bring in the props. This is going to be act 1.
I know that I called Chris Wilson. I know that I talked to Buster. So I made a few phone calls.
Okay.
And
where was Buster?
Buster was in Rock Hill.
Okay. Is that where he lives, or?
No, he lives in Columbia, but he just started a new job. He's going back to law school in January.
Okay.
So he's working a little part-time job with Wild Wings
Okay.
through January.
Gotcha.
You know, just kind of killing time. And he was in. His girlfriend lives in Rock Hill. She's studying for the bar exam, so he had to be in Charlotte. So he was staying with her in Rock Hill, her and her mom.
Okay.
Can I open the store?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, one thing I want you to pick up here. He's spitting out chew. There's science about chewing tobacco and DNA. It degrades the DNA in the cheeks. There's a lot of studies on it. I've wondered if he wasn't aware of that, because he's going to spit out chewing tobacco and later on they're going to swab his cheeks.
So,
All right, so where are we? All right, so then I
you
left
your
my
mom's
mom's.
and making phone calls.
Okay, so where are we? I.e., your wife's been murdered. Your son's, you've witnessed his body parts laying next to him. Probably the most traumatic event in the world. Usually it happens in sequence pretty quickly. So he's now stepped into Act 1. Okay, where are we? And that's exactly right, Maria. Act 1, and go. Let's see where he goes. Let's see where he goes with this.
I left my mom's and I went back home. I got to the house. I went inside. Nobody was there. I got in the car. I went back to the kennels and,
Cue the tears.
When you went back to the kennels, besides Maggie and Paul, did you see anybody, any cars?
I didn't see
Take
anything
your
right
time.
then. No, sir.
Take your time.
I saw Maggie and I saw Paul laying down. I knew, I didn't know, I knew it was bad. I went over there and, I saw it.
Yeah.
And, I
Action.
called 911.
Okay.
Do you see what he's doing? Look at him right there. He's looking to see if it's working. Is he writing this down? He's not buying it. Look at that. Look at double take. Looking down, looking back up at the detective like, dude, aren't you hearing what I've got going on here? So that means up here, he's calculating what the next move is going to be. And now the next move's going to be, I need to bring some emotion into this. So let's watch these subtleties very carefully. I'm going to go right back here for a second, and everybody watch his eyes and where they go.
I called 911.
Okay.
Down to the bottom and down and up. So he's trying to figure out, I don't know if this is working or not. I'm not sure if I'm able to sell this one just yet. So I got to try something new. What was the old Walt Disney formula, right? Make them laugh, make them cry, and make them laugh again, and then bring it home. This is why, he can't control a lot of his nervous system, his central nervous system. There are things going on with him, but what he can control is the fact that he's got behavioral issues here that are moving forward. And this is where, the behavior science unit is critical. And then, body experts, guys, who study this stuff. I just know this because I've sat in front of hundreds of these guys. If thousands of witnesses, victims, suspects, and this guy's classic. Okay, he's absolutely classic, and he's got deception. I can't even tell you how deep it is, because it's just all over him. It's not working. Watch.
Yeah,
See him
what
looking?
made you decide to go back to the house and get a gun?
All right. Now that's a huge question. We're talking about a gun here now. A gun. That's caused him some fear and deep hesitation. So he's going to take a deep breath. You'll see, movements of the body, and each of these things indicate certain things where he's pulling and he's pushing. His emotional state internally is now spinning.
Yeah, I just think the whole scene had me freaked out.
Okay. Did you take your car back up there, or did you run up there?
No, I drove.
Okay. And of course, the shotgun that we have is the one you brought back.
They were asking me earlier. I'm not sure which one it was.
Jim, it was a 12 gauge. I know,
12, okay.
Yeah, Ronnie had a question if it was 12 or 20. It was a 12 gauge.
And it was that camo though, right?
Yes, sir. I think it was the 12 camo Benelli.
Benelli. I think so.
He's trying to figure out how to
You got
cry.
Benelli out there, right?
And we talked about this a little bit the other night too. I know Paul had been getting some threats and getting some being assaulted from, the boat. Who stands out in your mind, besides the boat incident? Who stands out in your mind that would want to come after Paul and or Maggie?
I mean, sir, I can't think of anybody who would want to go to that extreme.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he got.
Now, the very first night, Katrinka, he threw the people under the bus in the boat incident. So being fair and impartial, I agree with you. Paul is putting innocent people in harm's way. Or excuse me, Alec is putting innocent people in harm's way. Thank you for that comment. Thank you for that comment.
Had a bunch of threats, mostly from, I mean, I have no idea.
How would he receive most of those threats?
What do you mean?
I mean, would people call and hang up on him, or send him text,
it
or
wasn't
social
so much
media?
that. No, it was mostly like in-person confrontations, are the ones that I learned about. Now, I suspect his friends can probably tell you about more, because I doubt Paul told me about all of them.
Okay.
But I knew about a lot of them. There were a lot of times where people would come up to him and he'd be like, they'd say something about, you gonna tell me who was driving that boat, or you little piece of shit, were you driving that boat?
Now, do you realize what's going on here? If being fair and impartial, he's not the shooter. But if he is the shooter, let's be fair and impartial. Do you realize what he's doing here is he is moving a double homicide investigation towards teenagers who were involved as victims, and who was driving can be argued all day long. But he's turning that case into this case. And let's not forget, being fair and impartial, that his number one goal, according to Maggie's sister and testimony, is he wants to exonerate Paul's name, i.e. the Murdaugh name. And he's willing to do that by introducing the boat issue for the motive of the homicide. That's scandalous, in my opinion, especially from an experienced trial lawyer, not to guess.
You know, stuff like that.
Okay. Who did he go to Charleston with on the boat that weekend?
I don't know exactly. I know that, I mean, I know who his buddies are, but specifically who was on the boat with him, I'm not sure.
Okay.
You know, but I can give you a list of names of who it probably was.
So, Joe, I don't know if you want me to weigh in here. You may want to put your pens down, but a good buddy of mine's son went fishing with me yesterday out in the ocean, and he has a best friend, and his dad's name is Lee Chapman. But
Yeah.
the kid said, Lee's son said that Paul slept on his couch in Charleston 2 nights before he was murdered. And so it's Lee Chapman's son. I can get his name. You probably know Lee's son. I don't, but he goes to the Citadel. But that's where Paul was.
Okay.
And I learned that yesterday out on a fishing trip, which is about half the standard.
Cool. I mean, yes, sir. If you could get me Lee Chapman's son's contact information.
There was a bunch of Chapman cousins that Paul was very close with. The closest one being Wills Chapman and Frank Chapman.
Wills Chapman is his name, but I'll get your number for you.
And that
And
was,
Frank
okay.
is John Chapman's son, and Wills is Lee Chapman's son.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where he was.
And those boys are, you know, they're just really good boys and friends of Paul's.
And one of them is Wills with an S, right?
That's
Correct.
right.
Now, I find this one, this part of the interview pretty fascinating because he's going to go down this lane of how irresponsible Paul was. And what he's going to do is he's going to plant into the conversation Paul leaving guns everywhere around the property, which opens the door for the correlation of, I think I heard something, and they, so what he ties it in this interview.
And Wills goes to the Citadel. That's you understand?
No, he's graduated from the Citadel.
Graduated from. Okay.
And Frank was in the Citadel, but I think he had some kind of, you know,
Okay.
academic troubles. But I mean, I'm telling you now, I can promise you that, I mean, those boys love Paul.
Well,
it's absolutely.
well, you know, and I
None
just
of
want
them.
to talk to him about their weekend and
Sure.
yeah.
I can tell you this, in riding around with Paul, he was his normal bright, you know, just, he was a really great kid.
So, being a dad myself, what was the biggest issue you had with Paul when you had to call him down and scold him or correct him? What was the biggest issue you had with Paul?
You know, I mean, irresponsibility. You know, he was ADHD. He was bad about jumping from, and he had so many wonderful qualities now, but he was bad about jumping from, he'd start this, maybe not quite finish it, do something else. And, you know, you'll find out from his friends, he had clothes strung out all over the state. He did that with clothes. He did that with guns.
There he just introduced it.
Did that with my boats.
Lost.
So
He lost what?
He would misplace stuff or just
Okay.
leave stuff behind, right?
yeah,
See, he would misplace stuff everywhere.
everywhere. I mean, he would go off for the weekend. Sometimes he wouldn't pack clothes because he's got clothes in somebody's house.
Do you see how subtle that was? He's talking about Paul being ADHD, clothes everywhere, and then he throws in there and he misplaces guns. Now, that's why we heard testimony about how many guns did Paul have, where did he keep them, et cetera, et cetera. But here, Alex, who was with him that day, driving around the property shooting, has just introduced the concept that his son was irresponsible around weapons. And that opens the door for the theory of somebody coming in, finding a gun down at the kennels and shooting Paul and Maggie?
I mean, Paul was the one, he wouldn't understand how you go out, you know, you and a girl go out on a date. He liked the crowd.
And who was his girlfriend?
He didn't have a girlfriend right now.
Okay.
That was kind of a spark, because we know in the boat incident, he was having a fight with that young lady that night. You can see it clearly on the boardwalk when they're walking. He's trying to go up after her, and he's pretty intoxicated, and she's kind of, you know, ignoring him, like, you know, get your act together, you're drunk.
Alex, last time I talked to him was like 2 weeks.
Did you see that subtle look? Are you buying it? What are you writing down? Family victims or victims of homicide families don't typically look over at the homicide investigator's notes.
The date. He liked the crowd.
They want to know that you are solving their family's murder.
And who was his girlfriend?
He didn't have a girlfriend right now.
Okay.
Alex, last time I talked to him was like 2 weeks ago, although we texted. He was going to Greenville for the weekend. I mean, he had friends up there, girlfriend up there?
No, we had a family thing in Greenville, and he came up, Paul didn't play golf. He came up on Friday and stayed Saturday, and then he left to go to Charleston, and we were stayed another day to play golf.
Okay. I thought maybe he had a girl.
My niece on my wife's side is having a baby, and we went up for that.
And you said on Monday Maggie had a doctor's appointment in Charleston. And I know we talked about this on Monday. Do you recall the doctor that she went to, or for what the reason was?
Maggie had a couple little things going on, and I personally think she was going to see Dr. Gordine, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's who it was. I can find out specifically though. Her mom will know.
Okay. And you said she and Buster were at the ball games all weekend?
Yes.
Was that
with me?
with you? And what ball games?
Carolina Regional.
They didn't make it past those, did they?
No.
Darn it. Did Paul? Well, no, Paul was in Charleston, so he didn't hang out with y'all that weekend.
No, sir.
He's getting nervous.
And what time did Maggie get back home Monday night?
It was after Paul and I had gone. She was not there when Paul and I left to go mess around.
Okay.
So, you know, it was sometime after that. So there was a point when, you know, she got back, we got back.
When y'all got back from riding around and messing around on the farm, was she home or?
Yes.
Okay.
It's interesting, again, just to kind of point out that you can see his eyes there again, whether or not it's working. But it's interesting to point out that all of the details when it comes to getting close to the murder become very, disjointed. I'm not sure, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And it becomes very disjointed in a conversation. But when you ask him about, so what happened over the weekend? I mean, he's right there with details, right on top of it.
And I don't believe she'd been home too long when.
And what's her car?
When what?
The Mercedes that's out there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And you said Bianca had prepared dinner that night.
Yeah, Blanca cooked dinner that night because Maggie
He
Maggie
never
cooks,
finished his thought.
you know, when the boys are home, or she tries to really for me, but she wasn't going to be there that day, so she had Blanca cook a meal.
How is your relationship with Maggie?
That was a fastball inside, and you'll see a very quick, subtle head check because he didn't even look at him when he delivered it.
Cooks, you know, when the boys are home, or she tries to really for me, but she wasn't going to be there that day, so she had Blanca cook a meal.
How is your relationship with Maggie?
Did you guys catch that right there? Like,
Very
there it is again.
good.
Very good. Very good. Get ready for the emotion.
As good as it could possibly be. I mean, you know, we had our issues, but wonderful.
As good as it could possibly be, wonderful. Those are conflicting statements because either they had, most people would say, you know, we have our issues and, you know, we have our fights. We're a couple. But he's going to qualify it as if, you know, it's Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast.
And I'm just trying to understand the family dynamic.
I understand you got to do what you got to do, I promise.
What was y'all's biggest arguments? What your biggest the things that y'all would argue about the most, what would they be over?
I mean, we really didn't argue, but the basic, I'd say the only thing that caused.
He's not answering and looking at him. He's looking away. It's all signs of deception. I mean, the eyes, you know, the movement, everything. He's not answering, and he's got a tissue in his hand, and you're going to see that tissue is going to start coming into play where he starts playing with it as he starts getting nervous and scared.
Any friction between us is she was always wanting us to go, and I love her in-laws. I mean, they're wonderful people. I love them to death. She was always wanting to go there, stay there a little longer than me and the boys wanted to stay. That was really, and it really, you know, she'd get ticked off.
Yeah.
Are you buying this? There's the cell again. Look how he keeps looking over. And I love the investigator is not even making eye contact with him because he knows later on I'm going to pull this video and I get to watch this video. But right there, this is classic, absolutely classic, that he's trying to drive a conversation here, selling soggy bread, and it doesn't look like anybody in this bread truck is buying it.
You mean her family? You said her in-laws. You mean her family?
I mean her family.
Your in-laws.
I mean, we really didn't argue about much. We didn't have much to argue about. I mean, I'm sure there was an occasional thing that came up that we argued about, but I can't.
Thanks, Tommy. You're making your point. I don't agree with you, but appreciate you bringing it up. It looks like Paul's in custody.
Tell you what it is. I can't think of it.
Getting close. Here it comes. Oh,
Take your time.
action.
Go. Tissues.
I'm sorry.
Cue the prop.
Hey, she was a wonderful girl and a wonderful wife. And she was a great mother. She didn't.
And not a single tear. And watch, he's going to break into this a second time here to the point where all three of the other guys in the car are having their own conversation because they're not, even his attorney in the back seat is going, we got to retake this, cut, we're retake. And they're all just chit chatting. Watch, it's coming up. This is great.
Work.
Great theater.
And she always said it was her job since she was privileged enough not to work. She was going to make sure she took care of me and the boys. And I mean, she did everything.
When my son was 8 years old, I heard the exact same voice and excuses, and he was busted. Here's a cool story. I actually had a kid years and years ago when I was on patrol, and he had stolen a bunch of recess peanut butter cups out of a Target store. 8 years old, you can't commit a crime because you can't form the intent, but he had stuffed his pockets with peanut butter cups. God bless him. So they called the cops because they couldn't find his parents. He ended up living in the neighborhood. And I went up to him and I knelt down to him and kind of hugged him. And I said, look, buddy, do you have peanut butter cups? They said you stole peanut butter cups. And, they had a couple of them on the table, and he reached in and he had the exact same demeanor. I mean, it was almost this brought back that memory, just to give you that indication here, right? And so I took the kid home, told his parents, blessed him, said, have a good night, go back, take him back down and make him pay for the peanut butter cups. Okay. And I think I actually paid for one or two of them and gave them to him. But you can't make this up.
She did absolutely everything.
And look right there. He's looking over at like, hey, are you guys paying attention?
Sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing? That's that right there again. The how many times does he look? And this is why I gave him the Oscar tonight on the thumbnail. And you watch this next one. I think it's the next one or the one after, where all three of the other guys in the car are just yip yapping.
I'm good. You go ahead.
That afternoon or during the time you and Paul
Not a
were
single tear.
Yes, sir.
Did y'all go up to around the kennels or anything? Did y'all do anything up toward the kennels?
I'm sure we did. That's our main shop is, right there. But, I mean, we're normally in there for long times tinkering. And I will say that particular day, we did not tinker around there a bunch,
Okay.
When y'all rode around the farm, what were y'all in the truck or?
Well, we were actually in two trucks. We rode in one truck, and then we rode in another truck some. One was the black one, and one was the white one that was out there.
Okay.
So they took rides together in two separate trucks that day. Sure.
Mr. Alex.
Yes, sir.
The other day when we were there, we came in and we were talking with John a little bit.
Sure.
And you obviously got a lot of, I say a lot, you said 20 or 25 weapons.
Yes, sir.
And you kind of what you got as far as any kind of, what kind of weapons you may have?
I'm pretty much, yes, sir.
I know you might not remember them all, but can you kind of run down what you had, what you got, out there?
That I own or that's in there now?
That you own.
All right. That I
Or that's
own.
in there.
That's a really interesting comment, that I own or that's in there now, which is maybe throwing out there are other weapons in there that don't belong to him.
You know, or wherever they're at.
And, you know, I mean, Paul has guns scattered all over the place.
All
So,
under the bus
you
again.
know, some of our guns aren't there, but
He admits that some of his guns aren't there because now he can put it on Paul 3 days later that the 2 family missing guns could be Paul's fault.
so you want to know all of them, or you want to know what I think is in my house, or what was in my house on Monday?
Yeah, what was in your house? Let's start with what was in.
You want to know all of them, or what was in my house, or what was in my house on Monday? You notice he's asking questions to a question. Red flag.
In your house on Monday.
Okay, whatever was in my house on Monday is exactly.
See, because now he can just, when the detective gives him the response that he's looking for, he can just, what we call, dovetail it into an answer. It's kind of like, remember, what is. That's what we just saw.
What was there minus 1 shotgun that y'all got.
Okay.
No guns have been moved for, there hadn't been any guns moved in and out of there other than when Paul was home. When Paul came home, he would ride around and shoot hogs a lot.
What would he shoot hogs with? Most of the time?
I mean, primarily he would shoot them with Buster's gun. Because
Okay.
Paul had a 300 blackout.
Okay.
And it got, he says it got stolen. And it's been gone for some time. But anyway, so he would use his brother's blackout a lot of times.
So Buster also had a 300.
I gave them both one.
Okay. When was that? About
Years ago.
Okay. More than a year ago.
More than a year ago.
Okay.
All right. So, but he would do anything. Paul had this, like a little light that I used that night. Paul would take that thing up to, by 308, and I mean he was always rigging something.
Okay, so this is an interesting point. I want to go back to this real fast. So what he just did was put the flashlight in his hand that night. Listen to this very carefully.
That I used that night.
You hear that? That I used that night. And he's talking about the flashlight.
More than a year ago.
Okay.
All right, so, but he would do anything. Paul had this, like a little light that I used that night.
Okay, now why is this significant, right? He just put a flashlight in his hand that the responding officers had seen that evening. We saw it on the body camera. But the question is, he ties it into Paul, rigging it up on rifles and doing this other stuff, right? Putting a light on rifles, etc. Nobody asked him, how did you get it that night? Because if it was left in Paul's truck, or if it's left, if Paul's using it that night while he was getting shot, he had possession of Paul's light. We don't know, but I find it really interesting that he brings in that light. There's a reason he introduced that light during the gun conversation here. All right. There's a reason for it.
Paul would take that thing up to, you know, by 308, and I mean he was always rigging something. You know, so
Going back.
sometimes shotguns when he would go try to kill the hogs, because you know the piglets would be grouped up, but normally he would have a rifle when he went to shoot the pigs. So, all right, so going back to the guns, y'all want me to tell y'all what was in there? Don't y'all, I mean, have an inventory?
Thank you, Karina. I feel sorry for him. He lost his family and now he's persecuted. Yeah, that's horrible. I agree. I totally agree. The fact that he's suffering so much in this trial.
I videoed that the thing. I didn't write down everything that you had.
Not really.
I just took a random, just like a recording of what was on the gun rack or on the gun wall in the gun room that day.
And there are some more guns that aren't in that gun room, you know. I don't know how many, but
Okay.
you know, like I do know there's a shotgun in my bedroom.
And I think Miss Katie, Agent Katie, Walt.
Now you would think that night, you know, to the young lady's comment a minute ago about being persecuted, that you would tell the authorities that, hey, I have Paul's light right here. You know, I've been using it. I mean, that's kind of a significant event, don't you think, that evening? Because that light is Paul's. That evening, he's using it. Well, where did you get it? Where did you get Paul's light? How did you come into contact and possession of Paul's light? How did you do that?
With John and saw that one.
Okay. And I imagine there's probably some in some other rooms. I know that I think it was we have two gun cases, one small one and one big one, and I moved some guns from the little case to the big case just because, you know, her mom and dad were in there, and I just took all the guns to the back room.
So for some reason, he decides to, you know, rearrange, you know, all of the weapons because the parents were over there. So, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. What he's doing is he's trying to confuse the investigators about, you know, guns and where they are, where they aren't. And we find out today in the testimony, he never did turn in the inventory of all the weapons when he was asked to, but he did introduce multiple shotguns that, you know, could have been all over the house. In fact, he even had one in his bedroom. Didn't tell anybody about that one. And the one that he did grab, the ones that they did find had the exact same loads, you know, in each and every one of them, the rat load and the buckshot. So I think it's pretty interesting that all of a sudden guns are becoming, you know, important to him, and the fact that he felt it was really important to rearrange them and let the authorities know 3 days later, hey, just FYI, I've rearranged all the guns. Just, you know, I just kind of want to throw that out there.
But that's after the fact.
After the fact. So after the murder of his wife and his son, he decides to move all the guns around. Okay. My son was just murdered with a shotgun. My wife was just murdered with, you know, a blackout. I guess I should just move all the guns around. Time to move them around because, you know, her parents are here or other parents.
Would those guns have been in the room in the gun room when we came up there with John?
I can't remember exactly when y'all came, but probably. I think y'all came a little bit because it was a good while before y'all came.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, they
probably
were
2 o'clock or so that afternoon before we got here.
Now, did y'all keep any guns out at the kennels?
We didn't keep guns out there, but there were always guns out there.
Okay.
You know,
You know, there's always, we didn't keep guns out there, but there's always guns out there. And remember earlier I told you about Paul because I dropped that into the conversation.
I mean, and I'm gonna be honest with you, we were all a little bit bad about.
Whenever somebody says, I'm going to be honest with you, just get ready for a knuckleball and it's just going to float. It's going to float. And we're going to call that a convincing statement.
About it, but Paul was the worst.
See?
You know, he was
Bingo. Paul's under the bus in about 2 seconds.
the worst.
He would leave a gun out there?
He would leave anything anywhere. And, you know, it was not unusual for there to be guns out there.
Did you notice we heard testimony from the prosecution asking people, well, you've been out there, including the caretaker, were there always guns out there? And he said sometimes, but not all the time. And where would you see them? Well, they could be on the, you know, the ATVs, you know, et cetera, the mule, you know, they could be out there. All right. But here, apparently Paul leaves guns everywhere. He's like Pigpen. He drops guns everywhere he goes.
Did y'all take the
But, like, I can tell you that, I mean, they told me that the 300 blackout was used in this. That 300 blackout, you know, it was not out there.
So he says, I can tell you they told me a 300 blackout was used in this. So now he's got an out.
so y'all didn't use that for target practice, or he didn't have it out there with them on Monday?
No.
Okay, no,
That was a fastball inside. Good move by the investigator.
that's right, because it was in the house. So Paul said.
Then he's looking down. Look at him watching what he's writing down because he knows, okay, he just hit me inside with a strike. And so I think the investigator here has a bunch of fastballs on the inside corner, and he's keeping tab of what the count is.
That one
Look at him.
was stolen.
He stared at that notebook for quite some time there about the gun. He's worried about that gun. He's worried about that gun, and he's not buying any soggy bread right now. He's just playing it, and they're both playing a game of chess here. And same with the guy in the back. They're playing chess.
Or lost, and it was some time ago. Was that reported anywhere?
It wasn't officially reported because I wasn't totally convinced it was stolen.
Okay.
You know, as opposed to lost. But I mean, you know, there were people told about it.
Yeah.
I know that I told John Bedingfield about it.
Now he drops names because that's what he's used to doing to get his way. Hey, you know this guy, you know that guy, you know this guy. Remember in the back seat earlier, we called that a bridging, where the detective in the back, did you grow up here? Yeah. Do you know Bloom? Oh yeah. Well, he's my cousin, who's my other cousin, blah, blah, blah. I can't wait to hear from Cousin Eddie.
I know that I told some other local officers about it, you know, just in case it turned up in a drug thing.
Okay.
Now we get the first introduction of a drug hit in a drug thing. So in case the blackout turns up in a drug thing, and we heard testimony today, the defense opened the door, unfortunately, to Cousin Eddie by bringing up a drug payoff.
But
Now, I did my career in Southern California, and we had a lot of volume. And a lot of it revolved around gangs, drugs, etc. I've yet to find any homeboy that would come out into the middle of the Murdaugh property, take that risk, and mow down his wife and his son and leave him alive.
Didn't do an official report.
Okay.
And by the way, when you think about that even a little bit deeper, that first night, the guy's running around the property when the police got there. If this is a drug hit, what in the world are you doing running around the property? They just took your shotgun. You're the next target, or the rest of his family. Everybody shows up, including the lawyers. He's getting nervous because they know they're going to press him here in a minute.
The two that you bought for the boys, that each one of them had one, and the one Paul lost, is that the only ones that you had?
Well, I'm gonna tell you this. I thought that Paul got another one replaced, but Buster said we didn't. But I was certain that we did.
Thank you, Dirty Blue Heater. Love it.
But I mean,
every time you hear him say "but," that's a precursor to "Here Comes a Story."
my memory is it's been gone for a substantial while too.
Okay.
Do you remember anything about them as far as were they the same colors?
They were identical except for colors.
Okay. Which one was Buster's?
Buster's the one we still have. Paul's the one that lost his.
Okay.
Now, Paul can't defend himself and say anything about it. So it's easy to tie this all into Paul, i.e. leaving the guns around, et cetera, because you can't talk to Paul. Paul's the victim.
What were the two colors?
Black and tan. Buster's is black, Paul's was tan.
Okay. And you say you thought you replaced it after he lost it, or with another one, but Buster says you didn't?
I believe that we did.
Okay.
I mean, there'll be a record of that, won't it?
Should be, yes, sir.
Now, that's a question.
I know we replaced it.
Now he's got a certainty. Because he just thought through if there's a record. He asked there'd be a record of that. And now he says, remember a couple paragraphs before this, well, I wasn't really sure, and then he was like, well, then you know what? But I think about this a little bit more. And yeah, we did replace it. And then he says, you all have records of that, right? And he said, yes, sir. He says, well, I'm positive we replaced it.
But, I wouldn't.
But
I know we replaced it because I wouldn't replace it again. Or maybe I just think that now. I don't know. But I'm certain we replaced it.
That's a convincing statement. Let's look for the eyes.
Have you talked to CB Rowe since Monday or Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
Because I know we talked about what he had done on the farm. Is he still employed?
He's still employed because I got to have somebody keeping it clean. But I can't keep him. I mean, he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
And, I know I told you, I don't know why that story seemed important to me the other night.
Yeah.
I really can't see CB Rowe doing, I just can't. I really do not believe that.
Well,
sir.
So now he's pulling back from the other innocent person that he tried throwing under the bus the very first night with the Navy SEALs and all this other stuff. Yip yap.
It's an odd story.
It's a messed up story.
And, you know, and I just, being in law enforcement for so long and working these type cases, and I don't know the Islandton area, but talking to Colleton County and seeing the property and how isolated it is, finding somebody that's just going to randomly come up there that late at night.
Okay, so now the detective is telling him, look, we're not buying it, and we're having a hard time trying to figure out, you know, why somebody would select this property up here that late at night. And look at the intensity on AM, listening intently, and he's going to fill the gaps. He's going to agree, and then he's going to fill the gaps.
Doesn't know the property. You know, that's, so of course I have to look within and then start working my way out.
So you feel like it's not random. You feel like it's intentional. I mean, planned.
Now that's a really interesting response, isn't it? He asks a question. You feel it's not random, intentional, I mean, and then he catches himself. Planned. And so he introduces intentionally planned.
I don't know what to feel right now. And I hate to say that. I don't know what to feel right now.
So do y'all have any good clues?
Now he wants to know what the status of the investigation is. Not the correct response from a victim's family.
The evidence that we collected Tuesday morning, and we collected additional evidence on Tuesday afternoon. They collected evidence at autopsy today. So we're trying to put a rush on that to get an answer quick, and hoping that's going to tell us something.
By evidence, I mean, is it things you think are going to be helpful?
See, he's asking the question here. So what he's doing is he's interrogating the interrogator or the interviewer. He's interviewing the interviewer just like he would at a deposition. And you'll notice when he starts getting the responses, he will respond appropriately. But one of the things that's kind of going to give him away is, yeah, I love that analogy. That's exactly right. He's fishing. Exactly. He's fishing. Okay. But when he gets this, you know, because he's asking, what evidence do you have? They're 3 days into this. And he wants to know, okay, where do I need to go? And look at his attorney in the back. He's listening intently because we're going to get into Act 2 here in a couple of minutes, where the investigator is going to shift it back into the murder.
Well, I mean, the shot shells out there, the casings, the DNA swabs that we took from the door handle to see if anybody touched the door handles, any other places that we think somebody may have touched while they were out there. You know, we're trying to collect DNA from that and analyze that. Which at the conclusion of this, what I'm going to also ask is that we get a buccal swab, a DNA swab from you.
No problem.
Your DNA is going to be there, but we need to eliminate it once it's developed. So, you know.
Now, the interesting thing about that, notice he responded pretty quickly, no problem. But just remember, he was chewing tobacco. And when you chew tobacco, it degrades and can even disintegrate DNA. Look it up. So the buccal swab is in both cheeks. So I don't know if he knew it was coming that day. I would suspect they did, based on the fact that he's got a wall of attorneys that have been around him from day one. And they probably, somebody said to somebody who said to somebody, hey, y'all going to get a buccal swab at some point. You know what I mean? Exactly. But no Miranda and his attorney present. That's right. You don't need Miranda because, you know, he's not in custody. He's going to kick him out the door. Have a great day. And that's another reason why they did this in the car. You don't have to read Miranda because he's not in custody. He's at, you know, they're still in the investigative mode here. They do know he's in the circle because you take the victim risk continuum and everything points to the bottom. Remember that lower left-hand corner of low, 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 low. So, and when we say he's in the circle, well, everybody's in the circle. Everybody at that point is in the circle, but because he's the guy who called 911, he's the guy who found the victims, he's the guy who went off in terms of a boat story. He's the guy that saw his son with his brains laying out next to him, but didn't know if they were dead. He's the guy that said he rolled him over and his phone popped out, but he didn't roll his wife over. So, yeah, he's in the circle. Doesn't mean he's a suspect at that point, but you would be a horrible investigator not to keep him in the circle. And it's interesting. He starts introducing people into his circle. You know, the Navy SEAL guy, the boat kids, he starts pulling people into the circle. So, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts going on here this night or this day. And as this investigation is moving forward.
We don't need that unknown
Yeah.
when it actually is a family member. Or
You see right there, his attorney in the back says, well, we don't know. And so what he's saying to the investigators, you know, he's kind of doubting what's going on here, I would submit to you. And you're going to see it because they lose interest in the next couple of emotional, you know, acting gigs here.
No problem.
I mean, we have talked to close to 100 people.
He wants to know what they
trying to
know.
track people down, and we're still tracking people.
And now he's a little nervous because all of a sudden you got a lot of movement going on here. Okay, I got to figure this out here is what he's doing.
People down, and that's why.
So stand by.
You know who Paul was with.
I want to tell you one thing while I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Paul was really an incredibly intuitive little dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he was like a little detective. And
Now, what was weird about that is he was asking about evidence and he shifts the conversation back into Paul.
I mean, Paul would, you know, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
There he goes looking down to see what he's writing. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? What he just did is moved and shift the narrative.
Which leads me to, let's go.
And he's wondering if the detective is buying it. Look at everybody on YouTube can look and see what he's doing here. All right.
Back to Paul right quick while we're on him. So we have his phone. Do you know his passcode?
I don't. And I'm going to tell you this right now. There's a few people I can point you to.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that he was super, super, super secretive with that. I mean.
Do you know how he knows that? Because he picked it up that night.
Cell phone. I asked his brother if he knew it.
One of the reasons.
Did the ones that they got the other day didn't work?
Did y'all get any the other day?
not for Paul's phone. No.
Okay. I know they got Maggie's code.
I know Maggie's.
Yeah.
And it works, or it worked.
Yeah.
I've not gotten it, but there's a lot of people out moving parts that may have gotten that information. So we'll follow up on it. If you believe somebody gave us a code for Paul's, a possible code for Paul's.
Maybe it was Maggie's. I don't know.
Okay.
But I'll find out. I will try to find out Paul's code.
Okay.
But it will surprise me greatly if somebody knows it.
I mean, certainly, talking about the investigation, certainly we're looking at every angle, trying to figure out what fits. And we're talking to, people that were involved in the boat case. We're trying to track down people that Paul knew and were friends with. That's why I asked who he was in Charleston with, so we can go try and see if they might know something or try to figure something out. We're trying to get into his phone to see if there's any information, see if he got like a direct threat from somebody there. I mean, the people that are here are not the only ones working on this. We've got people out doing things right now.
Thank you.
I mean,
Now, do you realize what this investigator is saying? This investigator is saying everything you told us about this boat situation, we're going to chase it. And don't forget that AM has pulled this boat incident into a double homicide. And remember, don't forget, his sister-in-law testified that he wasn't worried about the murder of his wife and his son, in her opinion, because her goal was that, but his goal was to clear Paul's name. So what he is doing, and did it 3 days after the deaths, is introducing the boat incident into the murder of his son and wife.
we're trying to pull everything in. Just the area, Islandton, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people moving around. I mean, I've got somebody looking at videos right now back at the office, combing through hours of videos that we've gone out and collected.
See, he's not worried about that stuff because he knows. And so you're going to get some truth out of him.
Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Very much.
But why are you thanking these guys? He needs to be leaning over saying, who killed my family? I don't want to talk about the boat incident. Who killed my family?
Much.
So,
Mr. Alex,
You don't have to call me Miss. You just
I'm
call me
sorry.
Alex. Thank you for that
Alex,
courtesy.
when you and Paul got back to the house, Miss Maggie's there, and y'all eat supper, which has been prepared, and you said you laid down and took a little nap, and when you got up, Maggie and Paul was gone. Or did they leave when you laid down, or before you laid down?
I believe that.
I believe, and here comes the tissue. Look at his hands. He's nervous.
I'm not sure.
He's not positive now.
But they weren't there when you woke up around the.
See, you can't make sense of something that is not the truth, right? The truth is a constant. And for him, he's been telling this story, but it's got so many holes in it that he reverts to this behavior. Every behavior has a purpose. Remember that. He reverts to this acting ability. And I thought it was really, and I mentioned this early tonight when they started playing the third interview in the controlled environment, when he grabbed the tissue in the interview room, go back and watch it again. At the table is a box of Kleenex, and he mirrored that behavior in front of the jury. He reaches up and he grabs a tissue almost instantaneously from the moment he saw it on his interview video. But here, he's using it as a prop.
9 o'clock mark or so when you made the call to Maggie to let her know you're going to your
No,
office.
nobody was in that house when I left.
So, and just trying to narrow that the last time that.
See, he's
Paul
getting
and
nervous
you
that
saw
they're
Paul and
staying on
Maggie's-
this. And look at that, where he's feeling uncomfortable from the investigator in the back seat asking these questions, because he cannot manipulate how these questions are coming in at him, i.e. through, eye movement or whatever. And he keeps looking over at this guy in the front seat like, hey, get me out of this. And he's also checking him out for confirmation that, are you buying, what I'm saying here? And it's
Nobody
real
was in that
subtle.
house
Watch, I'm going to go real subtle.
when I left.
You're going to get him looking here. Confirmation here in a second.
So, and just
Away,
trying to narrow that. The
ignoring.
last time
I don't like that
that
question.
Paul and
Boom. Do you see him right there? Look to the left at the investigator like, hey, are you listening to this?
you saw Paul and Maggie's when y'all were eating supper.
He wants to get
Yes,
out of there.
sir.
Up
Exactly.
until you came back from your mom's and,
Yes,
and
sir.
found what you found.
He's parroting the narrative. Oh, and action.
Yeah,
Yes.
Alex probably told you.
Okay, remember I said that this is getting old? This is, I think, my favorite part of this whole interview here today. I'm going to back this up and let it flow naturally. But watch the other three guys in the car. They're still chit-chatting like, oh, okay. There he goes again. And this guy's like, hold up. This is going on over here. And watch AM's reaction when he realizes he's not getting the attention that he wants. Remember that 2-year-old who would, stand in your living room or your kitchen and just scream and you just kind of turn and walk away? Okay. This is the exact same behavior that you're catching here. Only it's in the body of a lawyer. Okay, so stand by. I would not want you to miss this event.
Up until you came back from your mom's and,
Yes,
and found what you found.
Yeah,
Yes.
Alex probably told you all this. He did check for a pulse.
Yes.
So he's
Right. And that's why we want to do the DNA.
but I spent their DNA.
Right.
On that gun.
Right. Right.
I don't know.
Okay, not a tear. And did you notice that his attorney isn't even buying it? His attorney's yip-yapping with the detective in the back seat. I mean, you can't make this is right out of Central Casting. Hang on for a minute. And I'm speaking from, being a homicide investigator for over 13 years and a couple of weekends at this game. It's not working. And they know in the back seat, like, and I love the sled guy puts his hand up like, hey, hang on for a minute. Okay. We gotta let him play it out here. And they're in the back seat. I don't know if they're talking about fishing or what. I'm teasing, but they're not playing it.
Up until you came back from your mom's and,
Yes,
and
sir.
found what you found.
Yeah,
Yes.
Alex probably told you
Are
all
you
this.
blind, MK?
He did check for a pulse.
Yes.
So he's
Right. And that's why we want to do the DNA.
but I spent their DNA.
Right.
On that gun.
Right. Right.
Now, mind you, that's his attorney. That's his attorney having a conversation with the detective in the background. And his client is having a meltdown. And if anybody didn't see that, you need to get some experience. I'll talk to MK first. You need to sit with a murderer, not pretend.
I don't know.
Yes.
When you tried to turn Paul over, do you know if you tried to turn him like towards the kennels or away from the kennels, and his phone fell out?
Away. I think I turned him away.
Okay. Was he left-handed or right-handed?
He was right-handed.
Where did he normally keep his phone?
I mean, usually in his hand.
Most
But
young folks
I mean,
do now.
it was, it was always on him. Pocket, hand, truck.
Where did Maggie carry her phone? Anywhere she could?
Yes, sir.
Now, that's an interesting question, because the other one that I had was, why didn't he roll Maggie over? And you'll see later on, he's going to ask, do you have fingerprints on it?
Did y'all get fingerprints on her phone?
I haven't gotten that back yet.
That's an interesting question.
When Paul's phone came out, did you just pick it up and put it on, place it back down on him, or?
Yeah, I did not try to open it or anything. I don't know how I had in my mind that I needed to not mess anything up. I had that, somehow I had that presence of mind that I needed to not mess anything up. And so I tried not to.
And you definitely saw a traumatic picture, and I know it's not hard, or not easy. I know it's hard. And sitting here talking today is tough.
It was just so bad. They did it so bad. He's such a good boy, too. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But the little things that we've kind of
I understand.
is necessary so that we can get a little better picture as to what may have happened.
Yeah, that's the mystery, right? That we heard in court. I did him so bad. They did him so bad. That's going to be up to the jury to decide.
Well, I just thank y'all for everything. My in-laws, my parents, my in-laws, I would like somebody to update me or my brother or somebody.
Yeah, tell me everything that you guys are doing so we can, sit around and figure out what to do next.
So that I can tell them as y'all discover things. Unless there's some reason y'all don't do that.
Well,
I mean, they just have so many questions.
I understand. And
I mean, they may even, well, no, they don't need to do
well, I mean, I know Maggie's mother just had a knee replacement. How was their health overall, other than that?
They're ailing a little bit. They're getting on up there. Daddy has some neuropathy, but I mean, they're in good physical health. They're in good, their fortitude is good. They're just, they're just getting age on them, you
Yes,
know?
sir. Yes, sir. Are they in Somerville or are they at the house on Moselle?
No, they didn't. They lived in Somerville.
Okay.
That one goes back to it's a house on the 911 call. Same reaction.
I mean, they're here now.
Oh, they're here in this house?
No, they're in Moselle.
Okay. Because, I mean, I'll go by and speak with them and meet with them. If you think that would help. Or...
I think that would help a tremendous amount if you would just be willing just to sit down and let them, I mean, you know, hearing from me and John Marvin and Danny and whoever, what little tidbits y'all get, I just, you know what, I think it would give them peace of mind to know that y'all got a team of people out there on it.
Yes.
You know, he got pretty animated on that when he thinks he has an in into what's going on with the investigation, because therefore, you know, these guys are going to go out, SLED's going to go out and tell the family in Somerville everything that's going on for their benefit. And that way, you know, he's not going to get any of that, but if he did, he'd actually, you know, pretty comfortable with that, right? I mean, that's kind of the messaging here. Tell them so I don't have to tell them. And that way they'll feel better about it as everything's going. And if you get a chance, tell my brother and tell the other lawyers that all of you guys, you know about, because you walked into it when you went to interview me, or at least go to the cabin there or the hunting lodge.
And you know, just to really have something, you know, a tangible person instead of being told.
You got a contact number for them?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to get that.
Okay.
The jury saw all of this already. We're just commenting on it.
Have the ability to get the numbers that ping cell phone tower.
I'm so sorry.
And I know if y'all have the phone, y'all can then.
You're talking about the actual tower itself.
Yeah.
Her mom and dad are just such good people. I mean, they're just
Doing all
wonderful
that. Some of the
people.
other guys are back.
You know, he's apologizing for what? You know, because the family are good people. You're apologizing to the investigators because the family's good. Exactly. Exactly. So the rest of this is just going to be
Love her
getting the
so much,
buckle.
man.
Um,
I'm telling you,
you know,
man,
he's smiling
I've been
now.
the luckiest person in the world with in-laws. I mean,
Yeah.
they are
There you
wonderful.
go.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, it's my in-laws that I like, it's my wife's in-laws I don't.
There you go.
Let me grab a piece of paper. I'll be right back.
Okay, so this interview is pretty much over. So everybody's high-fiving. You know, he's gone from these emotional highs to emotional lows. And, you know, he's, I guess he's stable now. And, you know, he's able to go home and then call up and say, hey, I need my golf clubs in this back of the Suburban. So that said, we've had 2 hours into this. I don't want to keep you all night. I can't wait for tomorrow. I'm going to pick up on the third interview, which is a controlled interview, where he comes right out and asks him, did you kill Maggie? And did you kill Paul? And then tomorrow, hopefully either tomorrow or the next day, we're going to get Cousin Eddie, and we'll see where that's going to go. So guys and gals, great. We really appreciate you being here. Please hit that thumbs up button. We got 3,900 people here right now. If everybody can pound that thumbs up button, I would greatly appreciate it. And then if you would send this out to all your friends and family, we would even be grateful for that. I want to thank all of our mods who are always fantastic. Miss Sophia, Maui Girl, Tree Sam, and Mimi J2. Show them some love in the chat because without them and without you, our subs, our members, and all of our friends who come to visit, we can't do any of this. So with that, let's go to Hawaii, and I will see you on the next one. Oh, by the way, I'm probably going to, I've got Francine coming, and we're going to talk about Ted Bundy babysitting her kids. So put your seatbelts on. That's going to be another great show. Talk to you in a bit.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.